Just give everyone a couple of minutes to join and then we'll get started. We'll get started shortly, everyone. We'll just give you a couple of minutes to join. If you need to make a cup of tea or get a drink, go for it. All right, I'll just give everyone another minute or so to join and then we'll get started.
Sounds good.
All right, so just while we're waiting to get started, if you just want to check your audio, you should have your microphone muted automatically. If you have your phone or your PC ready, because there'll be some opportunities for polls and questions, and you can use your phone or computer, so you can get them ready while you're waiting. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be available after the session. All right, let's get started. So welcome to today's session about extra virgin olive oil presented by the Olive Wellness Institute and Nutrition Australia. So thank you for joining us. I'm Annalise Twig and I'm joined by my colleague Karen Stafford. We are from Nutrition Australia and we will be your hosts for the event today. So a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. This is an interactive session, so we'll be involving you and answering your questions. We'll be using Slido to get your thoughts throughout the session, which I'll go through in a moment. You can use the Q&A function in Slido to ask questions, or you can use the Q&A or chat function in Zoom. We'll have time for questions at the end of the session too. All right, so firstly, we'd like to know a little bit about you. So you can access Slido on your smartphone or on your computer by taking a photo of the QR code on the screen, or you can go to slido.com. And if you pop in the hashtag EV00, and as we work through the presentation, questions will pop up for your responses in Slido. And that's where you can ask your questions as well. So I'll give you a minute to pop in your answers, and we won't share these ones on screen. Okay, so before we begin, Nutrition Australia would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're presenting on today. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We would also like to acknowledge the important contribution our First Peoples make in caring for country, their strong connection to land, and long history of nurturing sustainable food systems. So let's begin with a quick poll. We want to know what you think. So if you could please rate your knowledge of the processing and production of extra virgin olive oil. If you could rate your knowledge of smoke point and the stability of extra virgin olive oil. And if you could rate your knowledge of the health benefits of extra virgin olive oil. So be honest, let us know, because we'll ask these questions again at the end of the session and see if we've increased our knowledge in any of these areas. And then another pop quiz. Can you saute, bake, and or deep fry food with extra virgin olive oil? Right, so I'll let you answer that, and I will hand over to Karen to kick things off, and we will learn the answer to this question throughout the session.
Great, thanks Annalise. So we're so pleased to have so many of you join us for today's event. I'll just do a quick rundown of all of the knowledge and expertise that our two guest speakers, Leandro and Emma, are going to be sharing with us all today. So we're going to be going through the science of olive oil, understanding the differences between olive oil and extra virgin olive oil, and how to look for a high quality extra virgin olive oil. We'll also be looking at some common misconceptions about cooking with extra virgin olive oil, as well as some of the health benefits and how you can use extra virgin olive oil in cooking. And we'll be having a live cooking demonstration with Emma. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our first speaker, Leandro Ravetti. Leandro graduated as an agricultural engineer and worked for the National Institute of Agricultural Technology in olive oil production in Argentina before coming to Australia in 2001. Leandro currently is the joint CEO of Cobram Estate Olives, formerly holding the role of technical director, and he's been with the company now for 20 years. He's overseen the production of Cobram's multi-award winning oils. Leandro is a leading advisor, researcher and speaker in the olive oil industry, both here in Australia and internationally. Thank you so much for joining us, Leandro. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, Annalise, for inviting me. And hello, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. In my presentation, I'll give you a very quick snapshot at some interesting facts behind the production, usage, and taste of extra virgin olive oil before Emma really shows you how to use it. We can go to the next slide. Producing high quality extra virgin olive oil is actually a very simple process, although by no means easy. You know, olives in Australia are at full bloom pretty much right now, between late October and early November, producing millions of small, tiny flowers like the ones that you can see on the left photo. And it takes those little fruitlets about 6 months from fruit set to be ready for harvest. You know, picking the olives at the perfect time is one of the keys for extra virgin olive oil quality. And that mostly happens when the fruit start changing color from green to purplish, as you can see on the photo of the right. And again, in Australia, that happens normally towards the end of April, all the way through May and until sort of early June. move to the next slide. When the fruit is ready, in the case of our large scale grows, and you can see an image there, one of those straddle harvester or large machines will actually run on top of the trees, pretty much combing very gently but quickly, picking the fruits and delivering them straight into trailers that we can see in the next photo. And we can also go into the next one. You see that the fruit really never touches the ground. And this is a process that we see also in the next slide, happens during the day and during the night, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week until we finish. It's a very, very continuous, very straightforward process. Then, as we see in the following slide, that freshly picked fruit is taken very quickly from the field to the mill, within an hour or two maximum. In the next slide, obviously, we see how the fruit is received into the mill, is washed, and moves ready to be crushed. And then in the next slide, we see that the crushing process, like in the old days, used to take place with one of those large stone mills that you have seen before. Now happens in a much more efficient way with a hammer crusher, and that turns the fruit into a paste. Like what you see in the slide on your right. It looks like a tapenade, and it gets mixed very gently for about 45 minutes to an hour to allow the little droplets of oil to merge into a larger phase of oil that we see on the photo of the right, to make the separation quite easy after that. This is also a very important step in the process, not only for extraction, but also when it comes down to flavor, because it's during this malaxing or kneading process that the extra virgin olive oil is actually infused with the natural flavors and the healthy components that are present in the olive fruit. Hence, the fresher and the higher the quality of the fruit used, the healthier and the tastier the oil will be. And this is actually a very, very important aspect of olive oil production. We move into the next slide. When the paste is ready, it gets simply and naturally pressed in one of those horizontal centrifuges that we see there, that actually spins really, really fast and separates the oil that is lighter, builds in the inside and drains out, and the remaining pulp is actually pumped outside. It's a very, very simple mechanical process. There's no chemicals, there's no heat used. And as it comes out of that, and we see it in the next slide, that oil is ready to be eaten. Nothing else is done, nothing else is added. It is truly the juice of the olives. And that's a great aspect of extra virgin olive oil, almost pretty much any other oil that you see in the marketplace. The only thing that is done after that, and we can see in the next photo, is that the olive oil is kept in stainless steel storage tanks under nitrogen, under temperature control, to protect the freshness until it needs to be packed to go to a supermarket. That's pretty much the process. It's actually quite simple. What is not simple, and we see it in the next slide, and that was sort of one of the topics to discuss, is actually the olive oil names. That can be actually a bit confusing. So I'll try to make it simple for you. Any fruit processed, as I have just explained, produces what the industry call, in general, natural oils. If the fruit used was of the highest quality and it was processed quickly, the resulting natural oil is classified as extra virgin olive oil, which is the highest grade in terms of flavor and in terms of health attributes. If the fruit wasn't so great, or if the time between picking and processing allows some undesirable fermentations, we have lower quality oils such as virgin or lampante. Regretfully, lampante, and that name comes from the old times where that oil used to be burnt in lamps, still represent nearly 50% of the olive oils produced around the world. Obviously, the industry doesn't waste those oils, and they end up being treated chemically and physically, producing refined oils, which then get sold into the supermarket with tricky, confusing names like pure olive oil or extra light olive oil or just simply olive oil. So in summary, really, if it's not extra virgin olive oil, you're not getting all the taste and all the nutritional benefits that are normally associated with olive oil. Everything else is of inferior quality and a bit closer to what normally seed oils deliver. We'll go to the next slide. I mean, usually the question is, okay, fine, understand about extra virgin olive oil is the most important thing to look for. But like with many other fresh products, sometimes it's difficult to know, okay, which extra virgin olive oil should I be looking for? I would say, like with many other fresh products, buying local from a trusted source, and when the brand actually belongs to the grower, is a great way of guaranteeing that you will be receiving the quality that you're paying for. In the case of Australia, there's an Australian certification symbol of a triangle that you can see there on that slide that can be of great help for that. And also always check for the harvest date in the bottle. The oil that you're buying shouldn't have more than 12 and up to a maximum of 14 months from processing. For example, in the case of today, our last season finished in May, June 2021. So you should be having 2021 harvest up until probably April, May, June next year, when you should be looking for 2022 oils. If there is no harvest date on the bottle, you should be suspicious. Most likely could be a blend of some older oils into that bottle, and that will be affecting the quality of the product. If we go to the next slide, this is important in terms of the health attributes and actually the real value that true high quality extra virgin olive oil can deliver. So to put it in very simple terms, if you have to go to a pharmacy and buy all the supplements in the form of vitamin E, omega-3, squalene, polyphenols, phytosterols that are naturally present in a bottle of 750 mils of high quality extra virgin olive oil, you'll be paying approximately nearly $10 worth of supplements. So that is really a simple way of putting in money terms the value that a bottle of extra virgin olive oil delivers in terms of nutritional components. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to touch on what is probably one of the biggest myths when it comes down to extra virgin olive oil, and it's the question of if you can cook with it. The answer is actually very simple. It's yes, and not only you can cook with it, but you probably should cook with it. And I'll briefly explain you why. And that actually starts with the smoke point. What you can see in these photos here in this slide is very much how smoke points in oils are determined. It is a very subjective measurement, as somebody has to actually judge when they're able to see some smoke coming out of the oil at what temperature, but it doesn't provide any specifications regarding the nature of the smoke. So if we go to the next slide, virgin olive oil, virgin oils in general, or more natural oils like extra virgin olive oil, coconut or avocado oils, tend to have slightly slower smoke points, as you can see in that graph, because they have a small percentage of very valuable minor components that have not been destroyed during the refining process that happens to most other seed oils. But that doesn't mean that the oil itself is smoking or is being broken down. What you can see is the smoke really coming from those very, very small minor components, which are really, really important components for the oil. In any case, the smoke point of high quality extra virgin olive oil is more than 200 degrees, and that's clearly above some of the hottest cooking temperatures. If we go to the next slide, we talk a bit about oxidative stability. It's a far more precise method, which really measures how stable the oils are under heat. And that machine that you see there is almost like a torture chamber for oils. It's called rancimer. And in a nutshell, what you do is you put small samples of the oils that you want to test in a chamber that is heated continuously at 120 degrees, while air is constantly bubbling in at a rate of about 20 liters an hour until the oil breaks down. And you can see those curves going up, and that's when the oil becomes rancid. So in the next slide, what you can see now is the graph looks completely different than the one about smoke points. And you can see that extra virgin olive oil is one of the most stable oils according to this method. And let's forget about the testing methods for a second, and let's just look at what really, really happens in the kitchen. And we go to the next slide. When we're cooking any food in oil, like for example, deep frying, which is shown in this graph, the moisture in the fruit and in the air, from the environment, and the process combined with really high temperatures that gradually degrades the oil, through the process, mainly through oxidation and hydrolysis, which means that the fat is being broken down by oxygen, by water. As the fat breaks down, the triglycerides start forming a bunch of different components, such as peroxides, alcohols, ketones, that then recombine in what we normally call generically polar compounds. And some of those polar compounds could be unhealthy for us. That is why places like McDonald's, for example, use instruments to measure the evolution of the polar compounds in the oil, and they change it once they reach a certain threshold, somewhere between 20 to 30%, depending on the country. We go to the last few slides. In the next one, we can see through some trials what actually happens with the different oils when they are heated at incremental temperatures regarding the formation of polar compounds. And what we can clearly see here is that extra virgin olive oil on the bottom graph is the oil that produced the least amount of those polar compounds, particularly in comparison with seed oils such as canola or grapeseed that actually produce the most. And the next slide shows that if instead of increasing temperatures, what we do is we check the formation of polar compounds over time at a constant temperature of 180 degrees or deep frying temperatures, we have a similar graph with coconut oil and extra virgin olive oil being the best performers, and canola, grapeseed, and sunflower the worst. On the next one, finally, I just really wanted to share a great real example that you can all taste if you want. Last year we've done a commercial trial with Grilled. I'm sure that you're quite familiar with the chain. And the result is currently sold by them as HFC, or healthy fried chicken. And what we have done was comparing the chicken being fried with the originally canola blend versus fried with extra virgin olive oil. The next slide shows some of those results. And what you can see there is that the chicken fried with extra virgin olive oil had the highest amount of desirable monounsaturated fatty acids in that green column, and the lowest amount of trans fats. It actually has even less trans fats than raw chicken. So it's actually quite interesting. And then in the next slide, what we see is that the chicken fried with extra virgin olive oil has more than double the levels of natural antioxidants in the form of squalene, vitamin E, and biophenols than the chicken fried in canola. And that is because there is a transfer of those antioxidants and healthy fats from the cooking media, in this case, extra virgin olive oil, into the finished product, which obviously is the fried chicken. And then on the last slide, I just want to really touch on the fact that it's actually not all about health. And light wines, different varieties and locations can produce very different tasting olive oils. That tasting wheel there in the slide with some of it, in this case, I'm using Cobram Estate as a main example of Australian oils, show a few examples from delicate and sweet fruit tasting oils that normally pair well with seafood or as butter replacement, and to be used with baking, for example, and medium style oils that are quite good all-rounders and great for general Mediterranean dishes, all the way to more robust styles that are very bitter, very peppery, goes really well with red meats, and used for things like grilling, roasting, or just to enhance the flavor of bitter salads. Back in terms of wine, for example, the lighter style, the more delicate style would be equivalent to a Sauvignon Blanc. The fruitier medium style would be almost equivalent to a Pinot Noir, and the more robust style would be almost like a big Shiraz or Cabernet Sauvignon. And then if you're interested, not that is a great thing, on the left-hand side of the wheel, you also have some of the defects that can be found in olive oil, if it's not extra virgin. Essentially, extra virgin olive oil, good quality extra virgin olive oil should remind you of fresh flavors, fresh fruit, fresh cut grass, fresh vegetables. But if it tastes anything like cheese, baby vomit, vinegar, so anything that is actually fermented, it's not a good indication of quality, and most likely something happened with that fruit. It's actually a very quick snapshot of the entire process, tasting and cooking methods. But hopefully you get some of the key ideas that I want to present, and that I'm sure that then Emma will turn it into reality when it comes down to cooking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leandro, for sharing such a wealth of knowledge with us all. And if you've got a question about anything that Leandro has spoken about, don't forget that you can pop that in the chat for our Q&A a little bit later. Now, while we get ready for our live cooking demonstration with Emma, we'd love to just throw to a question, put a question to you all about cooking with olive oil. So again, using your phone, you can use your phone to answer the following questions, scan the QR code, or jump online to slido.com. So it is, what do you see as the biggest barriers to cooking with extra virgin olive oil? So you can select all that apply, or any or all. Is it taste? Is it availability, budget, allergies, intolerance, knowledge level, or is it something else? We'll give you a second to answer. Great. All right. So I'm now very excited to introduce to you Emma Rosen, who's going to be sharing with us all her expertise on cooking with olive oil and sharing a cooking demonstration with us. So Emma trained as a chef in the UK under the guidance of Sally Clark, and she's also studied nutrition. With her time in London, she took on various chef appointments, food styling projects, and since returning to Australia, she's spent the last 20 years perfecting her craft through events, food styling, cooking classes, and presenting. Emma's company, Food Creative, is her food-centric project company. We're so thrilled to have Emma present for us today and demonstrate a few different ways to be able to use olive oil in cooking. So I'll hand over to you now, Emma.
Oh, thanks, Karen. It's an absolute pleasure to be welcomed in to this circle of beautiful professionals talking about olive oil. Thank you to Nutrition Australia and the Olive Wellness Institute, and thank you, Leandro. What a fascinating talk about the agricultural, the scientific, culinary and nutritional aspects of olive oil. And now it's my opportunity to cook with some olive oil. It's one of my favourite oils, that's for sure. And I'm going to cook up a few different recipes and demonstrate and chat about how olive oil can be used in a number of different ways in cuisine. We all know olive oil is one of the favourite olive oils of the Mediterranean basin. It's very, famous in culinary genres through Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Turkey as well. But interestingly, olive oil it has its strongest sort of connections in Greece, and Athens, the capital of Greece, has its namesake because of its connections in Greek mythology to Athena, who gifted olive plants to the area which is now known as Athens. So it's a nice historical connection to olive oil, and it's been used for centuries for people to enjoy, and also for purposes such as beauty and health as well. So my recipes today, I've got a few things. I'm going to do 3 recipes to demonstrate different culinary methods for using olive oil, and maybe hopefully answer a few questions and debunk a few ideas that people have about olive oil as well. So I've got a big, beautiful piece of salmon here. So this is a midsection piece of salmon. It's going to be lightly sauteed to get a nice crispy skin, just with salt, olive oil and a bit of lemon. Beautiful way to enjoy olive oil and the flavours of salmon together. I'm also going to do a focaccia, a beautiful Italian style bread. It's become very popular again over the last couple of years during lockdown, but it's an easy bread to make, so delicious, and it uses olive oil. So it's a nice thing to be able to include in baking. So that's my focaccia. And then finally, with all these beautiful tomatoes here, just so you can see them, I've got such a beautiful variety of tomatoes. I've got some basil as well and some sheep's yogurt to make a beautiful salad. So it's a nice way to be able to enjoy olive oil freshly dressed over some tomatoes to create a salad. So so let's get into it. I've got so this is a terrific recipe. I've been using a lot. I've done it so many times, and it's a terrific recipe for chefs to learn. And when I think about cooking, cooking in general, like I think about the whole method, so that I think about how it's going to travel, what containers I'm going to use, and all that sort of thing. But for this recipe, it's so easy to remember because it's a 50-50 ratio of flour to water. So in goes 1 kilo of flour. And then I use 1 litre of water to go with that. So it's 50, so you can do 500 grams and 500 mils. If you want to make a smaller batch, 250 grams and 250 mils of water. That's kind of a really good recipe. You can remember it so easy. So then I've got, so into that will go some salt, about a tablespoon. And then I've got some yeast, about a tablespoon. I'm just going to pop that into the water and just let that activate. All right, so then quickly just get the salt through the flour there. And then just stir the yeast through the water. And then 200 mils of olive oil inside the recipe. And then I finish it with olive oil as well, but I'll show you that a little bit later. But I want to get this going first, and then we'll get on to the tomatoes. Okay, so about 200 mils. Okay, so this recipe for focaccia, here it goes. It's a no-knead focaccia. So I literally just make sure I've got a large container because it will double in size. So you can kind of see we'll go all the way up to there. And I just use, I just use a, like the handle, oh, here it is. I just use the handle of a wooden spoon just to get it all around. So it's quite a wet dough, and this is what we want. And we just I let it sort of prove for, you know, you can let it prove overnight, which is fine, but you want to get lots of bubbles in there. And really the flavour of the olive oil does come out in this recipe, and that's what I just love about it. So you just kind of give it a good mix. You don't have to use a stand mixer or anything. Just make sure you use a nice big container, and it will double in size. I mean, all I do with this one is actually just check it a couple of times over the course of it being proved, just to ensure it gets those good air bubbles that we love about focaccia. All right, that looks fine to me. Okay, so normally, you know, overnight in the fridge or a few hours on the bench, and it will double in size, and you'll see lots of air bubbles, and that's that finished. Okay, so I'll pop that over here. Okay. So when you're cooking the focaccia, you set the oven. I usually set it to about 180. So the olive oil, you know, is perfectly fine at that temperature. You don't need to worry. The good nutritional aspects of the olive oil is kept fine at that temperature. You don't need to worry, but you just enjoy those really good flavors. And this one is actually a really nice sort of medium flavored olive oil. Like Leandro was saying, nothing too spicy. It's just a really good olive oil for this kind of recipe. Okay, so now my salmon. Okay, so this is a midsection of salmon. I'm going to take the belly flap off. This is just going to be a really sort of gentle fry. Okay, so it's got the skin there. Nice, beautiful big piece. I think this is about 1 kilo. So I'm going to do, this is enough for 4 people. So first of all, I'll take that belly flap off. And I actually use this in other recipes sometimes. So I won't waste that, but it's actually nice if you're doing portions of salmon like this to have it nicely trimmed. Oops, there. Okay, so now just in half. And half again. And quite literally, I just season it with a bit of salt. I don't use pepper until the end. I mean, that's a personal thing, but I don't use pepper till the end. I think it does burn a little bit in the pan. It's better to keep the pepper seasoning until last. So 4 nice pieces, and I'm going to put my little pan on here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, just wash my hands. Now, if anyone's got any questions or anything, absolutely jump in while I'm cooking away. That's absolutely fine. So 1, 2, 3, 4. A little bit of salt. I like to do the salt and the seasoning before I do the oiling because the salt has an opportunity to penetrate into the salmon. Similarly, if you're doing a steak as well. So put the salt on first and it allows the seasoning to actually penetrate into the flesh. And then I'll do the olive oil after that. So in order to get like a really beautiful crispy skin, contrary to what people might think about searing pieces of salmon like this, and also with steaks, you need a really super hot pan, and that's fine if you're sort of grilling or kind of barbecuing style and you want that really big char on your food. But for this kind of recipe, I think to get a really nice crispy skin, cooking with olive oil, you just want to get the pan sort of like to medium heat, and I'll put a little bit of olive oil in now. And you can see when you add the olive oil, it starts to kind of shimmer a little bit, and you know that's probably about, like the right temperature to add the salmon. So this salmon, it was room temperature, and you'll just get a little sizzle as you put those in. And I'm going to cook those until the skin's nice and crispy. And mainly on the skin side. So I'll leave it skin side down for about 10 minutes. Okay, I'm going to put this aside. All right, so that's all good there. Okay, so
Emma, I just wondered, are you going to get started on your tomato recipe now?
yes.
Excellent.
So this is a beautiful way to enjoy olive oil. I've got all these beautiful tomatoes, different colours and shapes. Go for as much variety as you can. And here, I have actually strained out some sheep's yogurt. So I did that last night in a cheese pot. So you can kind of see the waves come away. The waves come away. So I'll put that aside. And rather than using like a goat's cheese or a feta, it's often nice to put, variety. There's quite a few different cheeses you could use, but I think this is a really nice way to bring out the flavour of the tomatoes, and it goes really well with the olive oil. Okay, so you can see that there. It's quite it's now beautiful. Bring this back a little bit. All right, so I've got a nice generous dollop there, and I'm just going to give it a big smear all around. That was about a kilo of yogurt. So it's just a sheep's yogurt, which I've strained overnight, just like that. So that's your base. And now my tomatoes. So you can cut them in a variety of ways. The little ones are terrific. I've got some little green ones here as well, and some big green ones too. So I like to start with the thick one, the big ones, and I do those quite thick, even up to like a centimetre thick. I think it's really nice. And And then you can just start your base of salad. So you just do a variety. What else can I do? The green one to bush. Okay. Maybe another red one. So olive oil, it's interesting to think about olive oil from a culinary perspective, and all the different flavours of olive oil, and all those different myths as well about smoke point and frying point and baking and drizzling. So essentially, I think it's not great to deep fry with olive oil. From a chef perspective, deep frying usually is about 270 degrees. It's a little bit hot for olive oil. Although, that information that Leandro showed us about the nutritional benefits of cooking with olive oil at high temperatures, that's really fascinating. So don't be afraid to use it in that way either. Okay. All right. Okay, now a few more of these little ones. That. Again, like when I make these tomato salads, I like to actually use the salt before I do the oil, because I think then the salt's got the opportunity to penetrate into the tomatoes or into the other plants of foods that we're cooking with. But for this one, definitely season your tomatoes really, really well. And then just use the olive oil to finish the dish just before you're serving it. So it's really nice and fresh and beautiful. Something like that. Okay. All right, so we've got the variety of tomatoes here. Looks beautiful. Okay, I actually like to add a little bit of red onion. For a little bit of extra zing in this salad.
While you're cooking away, Emma, I've got a couple of questions that have come in. So it's just because we're in the interest of time, just so we get through a couple of them.
Okay, great.
Now, I've got a question. This might be a good one for you, Karen, if you want to pop your camera on. So someone's asked, if you deep fry something in extra virgin olive oil, is it still high in saturated fats, or can you actually have healthy fried foods?
Great question. Annalise, great question. So as Leandro sort of went through earlier in his presentation, the heat and cooking with olive oil, because it's so stable because of the natural level of antioxidants, it's actually really stable and it doesn't change the level of saturated fat. So no, I guess the short answer to that question is no. So cooking in extra virgin olive oil doesn't increase the saturated fat content of your food.
All right.
What happens? So what happens normally when you're frying, in particular, especially if you're frying fatty foods, let's say a schnitzel or a chicken schnitzel, there's a natural migration of the fat from the chicken into the cooking media, extra virgin olive oil or any oil, and there's a migration of the oil from the cooking media into the chicken. So in a sense, the fat of the chicken at the end of the cooking process will look more like olive oil, while the leftover olive oil in the pan will look more like the fat that was initially in the chicken. So it's just a natural equilibrium that the foods cooked in oil tend to reach over time.
So I guess the take-home message is, if you are frying something in olive oil, then serve it with abundance of vegetables and salad on the side, and keep that meal balanced with some grains thrown in there as well, perhaps some rice or quinoa or whatever it is that you like. All right, I've got another question about, actually, somebody asked what kind of yogurt can they use? Can it be Greek yogurt?
So yeah, so Greek, so if for cow's milk, a Greek yogurt, that's from cow's milk. So you can do exactly the same method using cow's milk yogurt, a Greek yogurt, and you can strain it out. And I think in some culinary genres, it's called labna. And just overnight, you'll get a much thicker yogurt. It's a great base for those dips like in Greek cuisine, like tzatziki and things like that. But I just chose a sheep's yogurt, which I strained and then got that really nice thick. It's almost like considered a fresh cheese, but it's a really good base for this tomato salad.
Oh, yeah, it's looking good. Well, I've got another question here, which might be one for you, Leandro or Karen, perhaps. Deep frying and just tossing versus just tossing in olive oil or extra virgin olive oil, does it make a difference in the nutritional value, I'm guessing, of the food that you're tossing it in?
There's actually a very interesting research lately that are showing that the more, not just the more diverse foods that you eat, but also the more diverse forms that you use to cook them with, end up having different potential benefits. In particular, there's a lot of interest around the recombination of antioxidants. For example, I'll use the case of broccoli. If you eat raw broccoli dressed with extra virgin olive oil, you'll be having a certain amount of glucosinate from the broccoli and antioxidants from the extra virgin olive oil, mainly biophenols. But when the broccoli is actually cooked with extra virgin olive oil, under heat, there is a recombination of a lot of those antioxidants that form like a new generation of antioxidants that seems to not only enhance the absorption of some of the nutrients from the vegetables, which many of them are fat soluble, but also helps to have almost like a different type, a different generation of antioxidants that could be equally or more powerful in our bodies, which seem to enjoy the diversity of the different antioxidants as opposed to having just one.
Excellent. How are you getting on there, Emma?
Yeah, good. So the salad's done. I'm just going to put that aside.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm going to just quickly show you how the dough, so the focaccia dough should look after a few hours. So this is one I prepared earlier. And this is a terrific size tin. So I think I've got this on the recipe. The recipes are up on the website and at the Olive Wellness Institute. But for this amount of dough, this pan is the most perfect size. So really, you just pour it out. And you just like to retain all of those beautiful air bubbles in there. So this is one that I made yesterday. And then I just literally just pour it out into the container. And try not to sort of muck around with it too much because you've got all those beautiful air bubbles in there, which is really typical for a focaccia bread to have. Okay. And then just sort of spread it out a little bit, making sure it's getting some edges. Now I just spike it with a little bit of rosemary, my fresh rosemary from the garden. Yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah. And then I spike it with a little bit of garlic as well. And then I finish it with olive oil and salt. And I'll bake it for about 40 minutes.
Someone's concerned about your fish in the pan.
No, it's all good. It's just getting really crispy on the bottom. And they're quite thick slices, but it's cooking all the way up. So I just do the skin side down quite gently and then flip it for the last little minute and then it's ready to go. I actually like salmon when it's got, like a little bit of thickness in the middle. So that's sort of what I'm aiming for with these ones. I think they're about 200 or 180 grams to 200 grams each.
While you're just finishing off, I might share our next poll slide just to get everybody's thoughts.
Okay.
Just while this is happening at the same time. So everyone, we asked at the start of the session to rate your knowledge. So if you could rate your knowledge now of the processing and production of extra virgin olive oil, your knowledge of smoke point and the stability of extra virgin olive oil, and your knowledge of the health benefits of extra virgin olive oil. So hopefully you've picked up a few little tips during the session that you can share with your friends and colleagues and family. And then it would be great to know what you think now after watching today's session. Can you saute, bake and deep fry foods with extra virgin olive oil? Looks like a resounding yes, so that is exciting to see.
Okay.
If anyone has any other questions that they'd like to have answered while Emma's just plating up.
So finally, I've just got my piece of salmon ready there. So the skin's nice and crispy. It's just a little bit cooked on the bottom, but mostly cooked from the skin side through. I'm just going to finish it with a little bit of pepper and some fresh lemon.
Someone's just asked, Emma, could you replace the flour in the focaccia with a gluten-free variety or?
Oh, I'm sure you could. I've actually never tried it, so I can't exactly say. But I know that there's some really good quality gluten-free flours out there. They do vary in quality and they do vary in the results you get. Yes. So if you're generally gluten-free, you probably get to know which baked products work well and which ones don't work so well. But I'm sure it's possible. I'm sure
a variety of different gluten-free flours, perhaps, to get that right texture and taste. Bit of experimenting. All
right, so my focaccia is now out of the oven. But this is what you're aiming for with the focaccia. So I'll just move back a little bit. So that's everything prepared now. So I've got the focaccia here, beautiful crusty surface. You can see that it's got all the olive oil being baked through and finished on top. A delicious way to enjoy olive oil. And then the salmon just gently sauteed or fried, crispy skin there, beautiful, with some just lemons, salt and pepper, so simple and healthy. And then my tomato salad, drizzled with olive oil, lots of beautiful fresh basil, and that sheep's yogurt as a base. So it's a meal and a beautiful way to enjoy olive oil. So the recipes will be on the website. So the oliveoilinstitute.org has all the recipes there. And we'll upload some fresh photos from these today for you as well. So yeah, hope you enjoy my cooking. And is there any other questions or anything like that?
Thanks so much, Emma. Yes, we will be sending out a recording of the session today, as well as a link to Emma's recipe on the Olive Wellness Institute website, so you can go and have a look. There's lots of other resources that you can hunt through on the website as well. I'll just see if anyone's got any other questions that they would like to have answered before we go. Someone's actually asked about the olive tasting wheel, Leandro, that you've got in your presentation. Is there a way that they can get a copy of that?
Yeah, there's a website. We can pass you on the contact details of the website where it can be downloaded.
Excellent. I'll pop that in the email as well when I send out the recording. If anyone else had one last question before we go, if not, let me have a look. Getting a lot of thank you. Actually, somebody's asked about olive oil soap for skin and hair. Leandro, do you dabble in beauty products?
No, not into that space yet. Although the main reason why olive oil has been used for a long time on skin has a lot to do with, again, the fatty acid profile and some of those antioxidants, particularly the squalene that we mentioned before. So there's certainly science behind it. It just comes down to a very different technique and business.
I think olive oil is actually, it is famous for its ability to lower cholesterol and those sorts of things when you ingest olive oil, but it's also high in vitamin E, I think. So that's the vitamin that really gives us some really nice skin. I think the Mediterranean diet, it shows that, beautiful skin and healthy hearts.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you jumping on and listening to our wonderful speakers. We'd like to thank the Olive Wellness Institute and the Australian Culinary Federation. And of course, we'd love to thank Leandro and Emma for their time. It's been wonderful, and I am very hungry now after watching those recipes.
Me too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.